When Alan Johnston was released, he was determined that he would never ever again be impatient. And when he got on the plane at Jerusalem to come back to London, the plane was delayed for an hour and a half because a woman had managed to smuggle a chihuahua on board in her handbag. Chihuahua was discovered, and the woman and chihuahua on her luggage were offloaded. So the plane was delayed by an hour and a half. And he noticed that everyone was getting really annoyed with this, and he didn't care, because an hour and a half not in captivity, whether you were on a plane or not, was just a joy to him, an hour and a half of freedom. But when he got back, his parents lived in Scotland, and he went back to Scotland and was determined he'd never be annoyed about time ever again. And it was only, he said, about 4 weeks later that he was at a bus stop and it was raining and the bus didn't come, and he found himself impatient and swearing and thinking he couldn't believe it, that he'd already let time, and anxiety about it get the better of him. So it does seem that the warping of time is something we never really get used to, and that's why I think time is such a fascinating subject, and I've been amazed by the number of people who all say, I'm obsessed with time. And I think the reason we're so interested in it is that we don't quite get used to what happens to it, and that it plays tricks on us. It can play all sorts of strange tricks. If you show people logos of fast food outlets, McDonald's, etc., it makes them more impatient in experiments. So things can change very quickly. So I'm going to see how many of these topics surrounding time I can fit into my allotted time today. It's quite interesting doing this here because there's a giant clock on the stage that I can see where I see time. I can see my time and possibly life ticking away there, so I'll try and ignore it until it's nearer the time. But what I'm talking about, to be clear, is very different from the physics of time. So this is about the subjective experience of time, whether time feels to us as though it's going fast or slowly. Of course, there's time on the clock, and time that will change according to the theory of relativity, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what it actually feels like, our subjective experience of it. Why it is that when you're bored, it goes really slowly. There have been lots of experiments done on this. One of my favourites is from the 1930s, done by an American psychologist called Hudson Hoagland. And what he did was, his wife had flu, and he was looking after her very nicely, and she would say to him every so often, can you get me some water or some juice? And he'd go down to the kitchen to get it. And whenever he came back, she'd say, why were you away so long? You took ages. Hurry straight back. You took ages. And he didn't take ages. So he thought this was rather odd, that something seemed to be going on here. So like any good psychologist, he decided this was the opportunity for an experiment with his poor wife. So he got his wife to take part in more than 30 trials of this experiment while she had flu, which was to, he would take her temperature at different times, note down her temperature, and then get her to estimate 2 minutes passing to see how long this would take. Absolutely classic study of time perception, something still done in the lab today, very easy to manipulate to get you to get it wrong. You just ask people to guess without counting when 2 minutes has gone by. And he found that the higher her temperature was, the slower time seemed to be going for her. When her temperature came down again, time sped up again. So temperature seemed to be having something to do with it here. And then experiments on this have carried on. Much more recently, in 2003, it was quite a mean experiment done by a psychologist, and they did tell everybody afterwards that they were just being mean. Done by a psychologist called Jean Twenge, but a clever experiment. And what they did is they got a group of people, about, say, 50 people or so, and they got them to put name badges on, and to just mingle in the room and to chat with each other about what sort of music they liked and where they'd been on holiday recently. And afterwards, people then were told they would be working in pairs. And what they had to do was to write down the name of a couple of people they'd most like to work with, so that they could be paired up with somebody they liked. Then they called them all into a room one at a time to find out who they'd be paired up with. And this is where the mean bit came in, because with half of those people, they go into the room one at a time, and the experimenter sort of shuffles about a bit uncomfortably and says, I'm really sorry about this, this has never happened before, but I'm afraid nobody has put you down. Not true at all, very mean. So they tell them no one's put them down, but because this has never happened before, they're not quite sure what to do, so it's best if they just go to a room and work on their own, and that they'll give them the tasks to do. They tell half the people this. The other half of the people, they come in and they say, this has never happened before, this is amazing, but everybody put you down. We've never had this, so we don't really know what to do. It's not really very fair to make people to choose one for you. So what we're going to do is, it's fairest if you work on your own in this room. So there you are with all these people in different rooms on their own, half of them wondering why everyone hates them, and half of them thinking, oh, I'm really popular, I'm not doing this. It must be really, really nice. And then the first test they give them is, again, a classic test of time perception, estimating 2 minutes passing. And what's incredible is that for the group that were feeling rejected, time actually felt to them as if it was going more slowly. So it's measurably different for them than for the happy, popular people for whom time goes faster.